It's so tempting to look up every single word that you don't know when you're watching a TV show or you're watching a movie in a different language. The key is continue and get into the flow of that language. The emotional attachment we have, or the emotional connection with whatever we're watching, is so much more important for language learning than stopping and pausing all the time when you're trying to research a word that you don't know. Hi, I'm James, I'm native in English and I can speak Spanish and Italian. I help people reach a conversational level in a different language. You might relate to this. You're watching something on Netflix or on YouTube or something, and you're watching a conversation, you're getting into flow of what's going on, and then you see a word that you don't know on the subtitles. Maybe you're early on in your journey and you've got English subtitles on, or whatever your native language is, and you can see a word and you're not sure about what it means. Then you stop it, you pause it, you get your phone out, you get Word Reference or Google Translate out, and you type it in, and you think, okay, that means good or bad or whatever the word may be. If you think about it, the reason you're watching that movie or that TV show is because you want to learn the language with not really minimal effort, but you want to enjoy the journey of learning the language, basically. And the way we learn is using context, and that's why you're watching this TV show. You're watching it because you're essentially becoming a third part in that scenario that's going on. Maybe there's people around a dinner table, or maybe there's action going on and people are saying things and you want to understand what they're saying. Well, as babies and as kids, our mind is used to understanding what's going on and not having a different language to translate it into. So we learn a new word or phrase by the emotional feeling it gives us. So if we think of too hot, like if we think of temperature too hot, the way in which we learnt this word initially was as a child or as a baby, we learn, oh, hot is bad if it's too hot, or this is what it feels like. This is the emotional connection that we have to that word. You want to achieve that same thing when you're watching a TV show or a movie, because you want to be interested in it. You want to learn about the characters and how they interact and how they transition between emotions, how they get excited, sad, how they deal with uncertainty. You're less concerned about exactly what word they're saying at the moment because your brain is more programmed to pick up on emotional transitions and what the meaning is behind what they're saying. Naturally, so you might think, the controversial statement is don't look up words when you're watching something on TV or on Netflix or a series or something, because you want to get into an emotional state and stay in that state rather than pausing it. Well, surely I'm watching this TV series to learn new bits of the language. Maybe I'm learning Spanish or Italian and I can see a word that I don't know. This is a great opportunity to look that up. Yes, that could be. However, there's two parts to this. One part is over time, by continuous exposure and continually watching TV shows and series, that word will most likely come up again and again and again. In fact, it will do, because if you can see that on this thing that you're watching, it's most likely a word that's useful and is going to be used by people in the future. So if there's a word that you don't know, don't look it up. Just accept that, okay. And this is a difficult skill to have when learning a different language. You have to accept that I am not going to look up this word right now. I know that getting into flow and understanding and the emotional connection with what I'm watching is more important, so I'm not stopping and starting every few minutes. And also, with repeat exposure, your brain will naturally pick up the meaning of this word anyway over time. Simply put, watching a TV show or movie in a different language should be as enjoyable as possible. It should require least friction. And when I say friction, in order to form habits, we have to do things that don't take too much effort to do, and we can do it sustainably over a long period of time. Think of anything that you've learned or you've done, maybe it's cooking or maybe a skill or something. If there's little resistance to do it and you can do it regularly over a long period of time with consistency, you're most likely to be really good at that skill. That's something that you're most likely to have been good at. So cooking is maybe minimum once or twice per day, lunch and dinner. That's something which a lot of people have if they're used to cooking themselves. And because the frequency that you do in it adds up over time, that's where you get the value from. So in the same sense of this language learning, if you're watching a TV show or TV series and you're regularly watching it, it's part of your lifestyle, maybe with your partner or friends or something, or even on your own. If there's a regular sort of a few evenings per week or something in your spare time and you're watching it, then that's a great part. That's a great part of the big puzzle of learning a different language. You can stick to whatever works for you. You don't have to sit down and study grammar. Watching a TV show or watching something gives you context of what's going on. It also helps you understand the intonations and the way in which people speak the language. For example, Italian is more melodic, up and down. Spanish is more like machine gunny, quite rhythmic. And that can apply to many different languages, not just these two. French or German, you can understand how these languages are spoken and how they sound and everything, and also the informal phrases that people say in everyday language. So if you're watching a Netflix show and it consists of people around a dinner table and they're making jokes and things like that, it's more practical if you want to learn that kind of language. It's less formal, essentially. And if you're interested in those informal social interactions and having a conversation with native speakers, that's a perfect way to learn it. But just resist the temptation to search for every word that you don't know, because it's more important that you're essentially emotionally involved in the conversation or what's going on, and your brain will automatically pick up over time based on the context and people's facial expressions and what their body movements are when they're talking about things. You can sense if someone's happy or sad, so you can sense, oh, that's probably a bad word, or that's probably a word to signify it's a bad meaning, and you pick up that over time. So what's the psychology behind why it's important to have an emotional connection and stay in the flow of what you're watching compared to having to pause it and look up the word every time? Well, emotional connections are very important because our brain knows what is important and what to understand and learn and keep in its long-term memory if there's a strong emotional attachment to it. For example, you might have been abroad at some point and see something happen on the street or see an event, and you're like, wow, that's interesting. It might make you get your phone out to record it or something, or someone does something strange or something. If that happens, you're most likely to, your attention will turn towards that thing. So if someone shouts and they're very angry or something, and they say an Italian word or an Italian swear word, your mind will link that word to the situation, because our brains are designed to pick up on emotions like that because it suggests it's an important thing for us to remember. There's so much information on a daily basis that we can absorb and our mind and our ears are listening to and our mind is trying to get used to. So if the best way that the brain can determine what's useful and what's irrelevant or not as useful is where there's a strong emotional science to it. Emotions tell us that it's important from a human perspective because another human is excited or scared or nervous or any emotion attached to it, it has relevance to us because it might be important. Whereas anything else, if there's a casual conversation and not much is happening, then we zone out, we're bored. This happens in lectures, in lessons, in a lot of different things in your life. You might be really bored if nothing emotionally is going on, nothing's changing, there's no fights happening, then it's not relevant for us because in our mind it's not useful for us going forwards. So your mind finds out, in order to let it identify what's important and what isn't, it attaches emotion to it. The difference between being fluent in a language or like conversation or being able to have a conversation and having to translate into your native language is exactly this. It's the idea that you're using an emotion in your mind, you're not translating it every single word into your mind. So that's a difference. So you're feeling the words rather than translating it directly. And that lack of translation means that there's less time required for you to understand what's being said because you're not translating it into your native language. That's why watching films and movies over a long period of time helps you with that, because you don't have to translate it in your head. You can just feel the words, if that makes sense. You can feel that the word caldo means hot. So you don't need to say hot in your native language. You can just feel that that's what it means and then understand the rest. And that's the difference between being okay at a language and having to sort of translate between the language and your native language to understand what's being said. So there's a slight pause. And then that's the next level from that is being more conversational, more fluent, whereby someone says something and you understand what they're saying in real time. So enjoy it, make the most of it, and just get into the flow rather than having to have the urge to research every single word, which will stop you ultimately from reaching your language goals. One final thing is 84% of people who watch this video haven't subscribed to my channel. Not only will you be notified whenever I release a new video, so you'll be in the loop, and all my shorts as well that I release, but also you'll help me grow this channel, which I'd massively appreciate it if you find any value from these videos. Thanks again for watching. Please feel free to like this video and leave a comment if you really enjoyed it. Thanks.